Good evening, dear listeners, and welcome to Mystery Tales channel, where we delve into the timeless world of intrigue and deduction. I'm your host, Evelyn Thorne, and tonight I have a special treat for you. A brand new Hercule Poirot Mystery, crafted in the inimitable style of Agatha Christie. Settle in with a cup of tea, dim the lights, and let yourself be transported to the opulent yet shadowy halls of 1920s England. This is Fatal Mask at Louvre Court, a tale of deception, ancient curses, and the brilliance of those little grey cells. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Louvre Court. It was a crisp autumn morning in 1925, the sort that wrapped London in a shroud of swirling fog, turning the bustling streets of Mayfair into a labyrinth of muffled footsteps and ghostly, horse-drawn carriages. The air carried the faint tang of coal smoke and damp leaves, a reminder that winter lurked just beyond the golden haze of October. In the quiet sanctuary of Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sat ensconced in his favourite armchair, a figure of meticulous elegance amid the clutter of his cherished possessions. The Belgian detective, now in his mid-50s, presented an appearance as precise as a Swiss watch. His egg-shaped head gleamed under the soft glow of a shaded lamp, and his magnificent moustaches, waxed to perfection, curled upward like the wings of some exotic bird. He wore a velvet smoking jacket of deep burgundy, its lapels embroidered with subtle gold thread, and beside him on a polished side table rested a tiny cup of thick black coffee, accompanied by a silver tray bearing a single perfect macaron. Poirot sipped delicately, his sharp green eyes scanning the Morning Post with the intensity of a hawk surveying prey. The fire in the grate crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows across walls adorned with mementos of past triumphs. A framed photograph from the Orient Express affair, a carved ivory figurine from a Nile adventure, and shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound volumes on criminology, psychology, and the finer arts. It was a room that breathed order and intellect, a bulwark against the chaos of the world outside. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured to himself, his voice a soft rumble laced with the rolling R's of his native tongue. Another bill from the tailor, another invitation to some tedious charity soirée. But wait! This one. This is different. He held aloft a thick envelope, its cream vellum embossed with a striking crest, a stylized jackal's head framed by lotus blossoms, beneath which ran the words Louvre Court, Sussex. The paper was heavy, scented faintly with sandalwood, and sealed with crimson wax bearing the same emblem. Poirot's nostrils flared appreciatively. Exquisite quality. The sender has taste, and I suspect a fortune to match. At that moment, the door swung open with a decisive click, admitting Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast English companion. Hastings was the epitome of the upright British officer, tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face, a neatly trimmed moustache of his own, though far less ostentatious, and a manner that combined boyish enthusiasm with military precision. He shrugged off his greatcoat, shaking droplets of fog from its woolen folds, and tossed a copy of the Times onto the sideboard. "Good morning, Poirot. Dash it all, this fog is thicker than pea soup. I could barely find a taxi. What's that you're reading? Another fan letter from one of your admirers?" Hastings chuckled, pouring himself a cup of coffee from the pot, far too diluted for Poirot's liking, and settling into the opposite chair with a contented sigh. Poirot's eyes twinkled with that familiar spark of mischief. Not a fan letter, mon cher Hastings, but an invitation, from none other than Lord Archibald Harrington, proprietor of Louvre Court, The grandest private collection of antiquities in England. You know of it, surely. They say its galleries rival the Louvre itself, hence the name. A palace of treasures nestled in the Sussex Downs. Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. Harrington, the chap who's always in the papers digging up Egyptian relics. Bloke's got more money than Croesus. What's he want with you? Poirot broke the seal with a flourish and unfolded the letter, reading aloud in his precise, accented English. My dear Monsieur Poirot, I trust this finds you in excellent health and your little grey cells as sharp as ever. I have long admired your unparalleled reputation for unravelling the most perplexing enigmas. It is with great pleasure that I extend to you and your esteemed companion, Captain Hastings, an invitation to spend the weekend at Louvre Court. On Saturday evening, I shall unveil my latest acquisition, the Mask of Anubis, a ceremonial artifact from the tomb of Pharaoh Amenhotep II, unearthed last spring in the Valley of the Kings. Priced at over £50,000, it is a masterpiece of gold, lapis lazuli, and obsidian, jackal-headed, with eyes that seem to pierce the soul. But whispers of a curse attend it. Those who don it unbidden meet untimely ends. Superstition, of course. Or is it? Join us for a masquerade ball themed around ancient Egypt. Other guests include my wife, Lady Eliza, our son Reginald, his fiancée, the lovely Miss Victoria Langford. Dr. Elias Thorne, the archaeologist whose team first discovered the tomb, and Madame Sophia Duval, the renowned French medium who insists the spirits demand its return. I would value your presence immensely. Who knows what shadows may lurk amid the festivities? RSVP forthwith. Your carriage awaits at Victoria Station Friday noon. Yours sincerely, Lord Archibald Harrington, Louvre Court. Hastings whistled low. Accursed mask. Sounds like rot to me, Tomb Raider tall tales. But a weekend in the country. Shooting, good food, perhaps a spot of bridge. I'm game if you are, old boy. Poirot folded the letter with care, tapping it against his chin. His mind, ever restless, was already weaving invisible threads. Ah, Hastings, where there is great wealth, ancient mystery, and a curse invoked, there is always the potential for human folly. Rival archaeologists, a medium with visions of doom, family tensions. It promises intrigue. We shall accept. Pack your evening clothes, mon ami, and perhaps a revolver, just in case. Hastings laughed. Always the dramatist, Poirot. Very well. 2 days later, on a Friday afternoon sharp as a stiletto, the pair boarded the 12:15 from Victoria Station. The train, a gleaming crimson beast of the Southern Railway, huffed through tunnels and over viaducts. The English countryside unfolding like a watercolour painting. Patchwork fields of golden stubble, hedgerows heavy with berries, and distant chalk hills rising like the spines of sleeping dragons. Poirot gazed out the window, his reflection superimposed on the passing scene. A small, dapper man lost in thought. Hastings, meanwhile, buried himself in a detective novel, muttering about impossible crimes. At the rural halt of Ashford Cross, a gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom awaited, its polished chrome gleaming under the weak sun. The chauffeur, a stern-faced man in livery, tipped his cap. Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, Lord Harrington sends his compliments. Louvre Court is but a 20-minute drive. The motor car purred along winding lanes flanked by ancient oaks, their branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults. As they crested a final hill, the estate came into view, a vision of baronial splendour that stole the breath. Louvre Court sprawled across hundreds of acres, its central block a masterpiece of Tudor Gothic revival. honey-coloured stone walls pierced by mullioned windows, towering chimneys belching lazy smoke, and turrets capped with weather vanes shaped like Egyptian scarabs. Wings extended like embracing arms, housing greenhouses, stables, and most famously, the private galleries. Formal gardens descended in terraced splendour, dotted with marble statues of gods and heroes, fountains tinkling softly, and topiaries clipped into fantastical beasts. Parfait, Poirot breathed, his eyes alight. A setting worthy of a Renaissance prince. The Rolls-Royce swept up the gravel drive, crunching to a halt before the grand portico. Liveried footmen swung open the double doors, revealing a hallway vast as a cathedral nave. Crystal chandeliers dangled from coffered ceilings, illuminating Persian rugs, suits of armour, and walls hung with tapestries depicting mythic hunts. The air was redolent of beeswax polish, fresh flowers, and something earthier, perhaps the faint dusty scent of millennia-old relics. Lord Archibald Harrington himself emerged to greet them, a larger-than-life figure in his early 50s. Barrel-chested, with a florid face framed by a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes sparkling with the fervour of the obsessed collector. He wore a tweed suit of impeccable cut, a silk ascot at his throat, and a signet ring bearing the jackal crest. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, bienvenue. You honour us with your presence." His handshake was firm, almost crushing. "The honour is mine, milord," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "Your home is magnificent. One feels transported to the banks of the Nile." Harrington boomed a laugh. "Flattery from the great detective himself. Come, let me introduce you." He led them into the drawing-room, a chamber of opulent comfort. Velvet sofas grouped around a roaring fire, sideboards laden with decanters of aged whisky and crystal stemware, and walls lined with glass cases displaying Minoan vases, Etruscan bronzes, and Assyrian reliefs. The other guests were assembled, a tableau of 1920s high society laced with undercurrents of tension. Lady Eliza Harrington, the Lord's wife, rose gracefully from a chaise longue. In her mid-40s, she was a vision of poised elegance, porcelain skin, auburn hair coiled in a chignon, and a gown of emerald silk that whispered with every movement. Her smile was cool, her handshake limp. "Monsieur Poirot, how kind of you to come. Archibald has been insufferable about his new toy." Poirot noted the faint lines of strain around her eyes, the subtle tightening of her lips. "Madame, your hospitality is renowned. I am enchanted." Beside her lounged Reginald Harrington, the son and heir, a young man of 28, dashingly handsome with tousled dark hair, a cleft chin, and the restless energy of one unused to restraint. Clad in a Savile Row blazer and flannels, he gripped a cocktail glass, his blue eyes appraising Poirot with amused skepticism. "The famous sleuth, eh? Father's brought in the big guns for his party trick. Welcome to the madhouse." His grin was charming, but there was a hardness beneath it, like polished steel. Clinging to Reginald's arm was Miss Victoria Langford, his fiancée, a society beauty of 24, with flaxen curls, sapphire eyes, and a figure poured into a cloche hat and flapper dress. Her laughter tinkled like champagne flutes, but her gaze was sharp, watchful. "Oh, Reggie, don't scare them off. Monsieur Poirot, Reginald's told me all about your adventures. How thrilling to have you here." She extended a gloved hand, her perfume a heady floral cloud. Next, Dr. Elias Thorne, a wiry scholar in his late 40s, spectacles perched on a hawkish nose, his tweed jacket patched at the elbows and stained with ink. He clutched a pipe, unlit, and fixed Poirot with a glare. Harrington's latest theft, he muttered. That mask belongs in a museum, not some private vault. Stolen from my excavation, mark my words. His voice was clipped, academic, laced with bitterness. Finally, Madame Sophia Duval, the French medium, a voluptuous woman of indeterminate age, swathed in diaphanous shawls of crimson and gold, her dark hair piled high with jewelled combs, and rings flashing on every finger. Her eyes, heavy-lidded and kohl-rimmed, seemed to pierce the veil of reality itself. "The spirits warn of this gathering," she intoned dramatically, her accent thick as cognac. "The mask of Anubis hungers for justice. Death shadows its gold." Lord Harrington clapped his hands. "Nonsense, Sophia! It's a masterpiece, locked safe in my vault, a room with walls of steel, doors triple-bolted, windows barred like a prison, impenetrable. Come, gentlemen, a tour before dinner." As they sipped sherry and admired the collections, Poirot observed keenly. Reginald's furtive glance at Victoria, laced with possession. Lady Eliza's subtle recoil from Dr. Thorne, the doctor's clenched fist, Madame Duval's theatrical gestures masking keen intelligence, and Harrington's booming pride, perhaps overcompensation for deeper insecurities. Dinner that evening unfolded in the great hall, a cavern of vaulted beams and flickering candlelight from a dozen silver candelabra. The long mahogany table groaned under silver salvers of roast pheasant with truffles, asparagus in hollandaise, and a centrepiece of hothouse orchids. Vintage clarets flowed, and conversation swirled like smoke from Havana cigars. Harrington regaled them with tales of the mask's discovery. Dug from a sealed chamber, guarded by traps and curses inscribed on the walls, he who disturbs Anubis shall know the jackal's bite. "Bah! Superstition for the natives," Dr. Thorne snorted. "Those natives were guardians of sacred rites. You bought it from tomb robbers, Harrington." Reginald interjected lazily, "Father, let's not bore our guests. Tell us about the ball tomorrow. Masquerade, masks for all. Will you wear it, sir?" Lady Eliza's fork paused mid-air. "Archibald, don't be foolish," Madame Duval shivered. "The veil thins at midnight. I sense betrayal." Victoria giggled nervously. "How spooky!" Poirot, savouring his coco vin, said little, but his mind catalogued every glance, every inflection. As the ladies withdrew and the men lingered over port, he excused himself early, retiring to his chamber, a four-poster bedchamber with views of moonlit gardens. Lying awake, Poirot stroked his moustaches. Motives stir like serpents in the sand. Inheritance for the son, revenge for the doctor, passion for the lady, and the medium. Ah, she knows more than spirits whisper. Chapter 2. The Masquerade Ball. The evening of Saturday, October 24, 1925, draped Louvre Court in a mantle of enchantment, as if the ancient gods of Egypt themselves had descended upon the Sussex countryside. The grand ballroom, a cavernous space that could have housed a pharaoh's court, shimmered under the glow of a dozen crystal chandeliers, their prisms scattering rainbows across frescoed walls painted with lotus flowers and ibis motifs. Golden sconces cast pools of warm light, illuminating guests clad in costumes that evoked the splendours of the Nile. Pharaohs with gilded headdresses, queens in pleated linen gowns, and jackal-headed deities whose masks glinted with menace. The air was thick with the scent of incense, sandalwood and myrrh, mingling with the sweetness of hothouse orchids arranged in towering vases. An orchestra, tucked in a gallery above, wove a tapestry of waltzes and exotic melodies, their strings and flutes conjuring the mysteries of a distant desert. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the ballroom, a diminutive figure in a scholarly scribe's costume, a linen robe belted with a sash of crimson. a simple papyrus scroll tucked under his arm, and a half-mask of black velvet that left his iconic moustaches free to bristle. His sharp green eyes missed nothing. The swirl of silks, the clink of champagne flutes, the whispered intrigues behind feathered fans. To his left, Captain Arthur Hastings, dressed as an intrepid explorer in a pith helmet and khaki, sipped a gin fizz and surveyed the scene with boyish delight. "Good heavens, Poirot," Hastings murmured, adjusting his monocle, a prop he'd adopted with enthusiasm. "It's like stepping into Cleopatra's palace. Look at that lot. Half of London's high society, I'd wager. And that mask, did you see it earlier? Gives me the shivers." Poirot's lips twitched beneath his mask. "Oui, mon ami, the mask of Anubis is indeed formidable. Displayed briefly this afternoon in the gallery, no? Gold as bright as the sun, lapis lazuli deep as the night sky, and those obsidian eyes, comme il regardant they watch. Lord Harrington assures us it is locked away now, safe in his vault. But the human heart, Hastings, it is never so secure." The afternoon's viewing had been a spectacle in itself. Lord Archibald Harrington, resplendent in a pharaoh's kilt and pectoral of turquoise and gold, had led the guests to his private gallery, a fortified chamber at the heart of Louvre Court, its oak door triple-bolted, its high windows barred with iron, and its walls lined with treasures from Babylon to Byzantium. The mask of Anubis rested on a velvet pedestal, floodlit to accentuate its eerie beauty. A jackal's head, crafted for a forgotten priest, its hollow eyes seeming to follow each observer. Harrington had recounted its legend with gusto. Found in a sealed tomb, guarded by curses inscribed in hieroglyphs, the jackal claims those who steal his face. Priceless, my friends, and perilous. Dr. Elias Thorne, in a dour priest's robe, had scoffed audibly. "Perilous because it was stolen from my dig, Harrington. That mask belongs in Cairo, not your trophy case." Lady Eliza, shimmering as an Egyptian queen, had touched her husband's arm, her voice low. "Archibald, don't provoke." Reginald Harrington, costumed as a dashing chariot driver, had laughed it off, while his fiancée, Miss Victoria Langford, in a gilded Nefertiti gown, clung to him, her smile brittle. Madame Sophia Duval, swathed as an oracle in veils of midnight blue, had clutched a crystal amulet and whispered of dark omens. Now in the ballroom, the guests mingled, their masks lending a neutral air of anonymity that sharpened Poirot's instincts. He noted Reginald's hand lingering possessively on Victoria's waist, her quick glance toward Dr. Thorne, who stood alone, glowering at a sphinx statue. Lady Eliza circulated with practiced grace, but her eyes darted to the gallery doors, guarded by Jenkins, the butler, a stern figure in a plain black suit, his own mask a simple domino. Madame Duval held court near the orchestra, regaling a cluster of awestruck debutantes with tales of spirit voices. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot whispered, "the dance of motives. The son restless, perhaps in debt. The fiancée, ambitious beyond her station. The doctor, burning with resentment. And the medium, her theatrics conceal a mind most calculating." Hastings nodded, then frowned. And Lady Eliza? She seems distant. Not quite the grieving widow one might expect if this curse nonsense comes true. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Précisément. The heart conceals what the face displays." As the clock struck 10, Lord Harrington ascended a dais at the ballroom centre, his pharaoh's costume catching every light. The orchestra fell silent, and all eyes turned to him. "My friends," he boomed, his voice carrying the confidence of a man accustomed to command. "Tonight we celebrate the ancient and the eternal. The mask of Anubis, my greatest treasure, lies safe in its vault, but I shall defy the whispers of curses. At midnight, I will don the mask myself, here before you all, to prove its power is mere myth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Excitement, unease, skepticism. Lady Eliza paled, her fan snapping shut. Reginald muttered something to Victoria, who stifled a gasp. Dr. Thorne's pipe fell from his hand, clattering on the marble floor. Madame Duval clutched her amulet, crying, "Fool! The jackal does not jest!" Harrington laughed, undeterred. "Nonsense! Jenkins, ensure the gallery is secure. Let's have music and merriment until the hour." The orchestra struck up a lively foxtrot, and the guests resumed their whirl, though the atmosphere had shifted, an electric undercurrent of anticipation. Poirot, ever watchful, drifted toward the gallery doors, where Jenkins stood like a sentinel. "Monsieur Jenkins," Poirot said softly, "this vault, it is truly impregnable?" The butler, a gaunt man in his 60s with eyes like polished flint, nodded curtly. "Triple locks, sir. Steel walls, barred windows. I hold one key, Lord Harrington the other. No one's been in since the viewing." "Bon! And you saw nothing unusual this evening?" "Nothing, sir." Jenkins' tone was flat, but Poirot noted a flicker in his gaze. Nervousness? As Poirot rejoined Hastings, the clock's hands crept toward midnight. Couples twirled, laughter rose, and the incense grew headier, almost cloying. Then, at 5 minutes to 12, Harrington clapped his hands again. "To the gallery, my friends! Witness history!" The short crowd surged down a corridor lined with alabaster urns, arriving at the gallery's massive oak door. Jenkins produced his key, but Harrington waved him off, brandishing his own, a heavy brass affair dangling from a chain. "I'll do the honours," he declared, unlocking the door with a flourish. He stepped inside alone, the door closing behind him with a resonant thud. Jenkins took up position outside, key in hand, ensuring no one followed. The guests waited, some whispering, others sipping champagne brought by footmen. Poirot stood motionless, his head tilted as if listening to an unheard melody. Hastings nudged him. "Think he'll be all right? All this curse talk is poppycock, isn't it?" Poirot's reply was cut off by a scream, a piercing, otherworldly wail that froze the blood. It came from within the gallery. Madame Duval staggered back, clutching her throat. "The spirits! They cry of death!" Chaos erupted. Guests pressed forward, shouting. Jenkins fumbled with his key, his hands shaking as he unlocked the door. Reginald shoved past, Victoria clinging to him. Dr. Thorne bellowed, "What's happened?" Lady Eliza stood rooted, her face ashen. The door swung open, revealing the gallery's dim interior, lit only by a single spotlight on the velvet pedestal, now empty. Lord Archibald Harrington lay slumped across his mahogany desk, the mask of Anubis affixed to his face, its gold gleaming dully. His hands were limp, his body motionless. The air was still, heavy with the scent of myrrh and something sharper. Bitter almonds, perhaps? Poirot was the first to move, kneeling beside the body with clinical precision. He touched Harrington's wrist, then lifted the mask gingerly with a handkerchief. The jackal's eyes stared blankly, but beneath, Harrington's face was frozen in a rictus of agony. Tiny punctures marked his temples, spikes inside the mask meant for ceremonial use, now slick with blood. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, "he is dead. Poison, perhaps, or something more ingenious. But how?" Hastings gaped. "Poison? In a locked room? The door was bolted, windows barred. No one went in or out." The guests crowded the doorway, gasping. Lady Eliza sank into a chair, sobbing theatrically. Reginald swore under his breath, his face pale but composed. Victoria fainted into his arms, her golden gown pooling like liquid sunlight. Dr. Thorne pushed forward, muttering, "This is what comes of meddling." Madame Duval chanted softly, "Anubis has claimed his due." Jenkins, trembling, insisted, "The door was locked, sir. I swear it." Poirot rose, his expression grave. "This is no curse, mes amis. This is murder, an impossible crime. The room sealed, the key in the victim's pocket, no secret passages yet discovered. And yet death has entered." Inspector Japp would arrive soon, summoned by a frantic footman, but Poirot insisted the scene remain untouched. "The little grey cells, they must work," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Hastings, note the positions, every detail. The mask, the desk, the air itself. We begin." The orchestra had fallen silent. The chandeliers seemed to dim, as if mourning their master. Outside, the Sussex wind howled, carrying whispers of secrets yet to be unveiled. Chapter 3. The Initial Interrogations. The dawn of Sunday, October 25th, 1925, broke over Louvre Court like a reluctant guest, its pale light filtering through the heavy fog that clung to the Sussex hills. The estate, so vibrant with music and laughter the previous night, now lay under a pall of dread, its grand halls echoing with the weight of tragedy. The ballroom's chandeliers hung dim, their crystals dulled by the morning's gloom, and the once fragrant air of incense and orchids now carried a faint, acrid undertone, the lingering scent of death. Hercule Poirot stood in the gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had met his end, his small, dapper figure a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous night. His scribe's costume was gone, replaced by a pristine morning suit of charcoal grey, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustaches waxed to perfection. He paced the room with the precision of a metronome, his green eyes darting from the bolted oak door to the barred windows, from the empty velvet pedestal to the mahogany desk where the body still lay, covered now with a sheet at Poirot's insistence. The mask of Anubis had been carefully removed by a police surgeon summoned in the night, revealing tiny spikes within, ceremonial yet deadly, coated with a thin film of curare, a rare South American poison that killed in moments through the bloodstream. The mask rested on a side table, its jackal eyes glinting under the single spotlight, as if mocking the living. The room itself was a fortress. No secret panels in the walls. Poirot had tapped every inch. No trapdoors beneath the Persian rugs. And the windows, 15 feet above the manicured lawns, showed no signs of tampering. The key, found in Harrington's pocket, matched the lock, and Jenkins the butler swore no one had entered or exited. "An impossible crime, Hastings," Poirot murmured, his voice low but resonant. "A locked room, a sealed vault, and yet murder has been done. The method, it eludes us for now. But the motive? That we shall uncover." Captain Arthur Hastings, bleary-eyed from a sleepless night, stood near the door, his explorer's costume replaced by a rumpled tweed suit. He clutched a notebook, scribbling observations at Poirot's direction. "Dash it, Poirot, it's uncanny. Poisoned spikes in a mask in a room no one could enter? It's like something out of a penny dreadful. Could it really be the curse?" Poirot's moustache twitched with disdain. "Curse? Non, mon ami. The only curse here is human greed, jealousy, or revenge. The little grey cells, they do not believe in spirits, only in facts." At that moment, Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard burst into the gallery, his bowler hat askew Bouchour's system. Inspector Japp continued, askew, and his mutton chop whiskers bristling with impatience. "Morning, Poirot. Captain Hastings. Got yourself another fine mess, eh? Locked room, poisoned mask, curses. Blimey, it's a circus. Despite his gruff tone, Japp's eyes betrayed relief at Poirot's presence. What's the story here? The local lads are in a tizzy about that Egyptian relic. Poirot inclined his head. Inspector, it is a puzzle most intriguing. A murder in a sealed chamber, with a weapon no one could have touched. But rest assured, Poirot will unravel it. Japp snorted. You always do, somehow. Right, let's get to it. I've got the suspects in the library, family, guests, butler. The coroner's on his way, but the body stays until you're done. Merci, Inspector. I shall begin with interrogations. Hastings, the notebook, be precise. The library of Louvre Court was a sanctuary of knowledge. Its towering shelves laden with leather-bound tomes, the air heavy with the scent of old paper and polished wood. A fire crackled in the grate, casting a warm glow over the gathered suspects, who sat in uneasy silence on velvet-upholstered chairs. Lady Eliza Harrington, pale and composed in a black morning dress, clutched a lace handkerchief. Reginald Harrington, the heir, slouched in a corner, cigarette dangling from his lips, his eyes bloodshot. Miss Victoria Langford, his fiancée, sat primly, her delicate hands folded, but her sapphire eyes darted nervously. Dr. Elias Thorne, the archaeologist, stood by a window, arms crossed, his scowl deepening the lines on his weathered face. Madame Sophia Duval, draped in a shawl of midnight silk, fingered a crystal pendant, her expression theatrical. Jenkins, the butler, hovered near the door, his gaunt face impassive, but his hands clasped tightly. Poirot took centre stage, his small stature commanding the room with quiet authority. Mesdames et messieurs, a tragedy has struck. Lord Harrington is dead, murdered in a locked room by means most diabolical. Each of you was present last night, and each, I suspect, has secrets. Poirot seeks the truth. We begin. He turned first to Lady Eliza, whose composure faltered under his piercing gaze. Madam, your husband spoke of defying the curse. Did you approve? Lady Eliza's voice was soft, tremulous. Archibald was reckless. I begged him not to wear the mask, but he laughed it off. He had enemies, Dr. Thorne, for one, who accused him of theft. Her eyes flicked to the archaeologist, a spark of accusation in them. Poirot nodded. And your relationship with your husband? All was well? She hesitated, her handkerchief twisting. We had disagreements. He was consumed by his collections, neglecting family matters. Reginald, too, clashed with him over money. Motive noted, inheritance, freedom from a domineering spouse. Poirot turned to Reginald, who exhaled a plume of smoke. Monsieur Harrington, your father's fortune is now yours, no? A considerable sum, I imagine. Reginald's jaw tightened. Look here, I didn't kill him. Yes, we argued. Father wouldn't bail me out of some debts. But I was in the ballroom, dancing with Victoria, when that scream rang out. His alibi was weak. Witnesses recalled him slipping away briefly during the foxtrot. Motive, financial desperation. Miss Victoria's voice trembled as she spoke next. Lord Harrington didn't approve of our engagement. He called me a fortune hunter, said I wasn't good enough for Reginald. Her cheeks flushed. I loved Reggie, but his father threatened to cut him off. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And where were you at midnight, mademoiselle? With Reggie, she said quickly, too quickly. A maid later whispered to Hastings that Victoria had been seen near the gallery earlier, adjusting her mask. Motive, securing her future through marriage. Dr. Elias Thorne was next, his voice sharp with indignation. That mask was mine by right. My team unearthed it in 24, but Harrington's money bought it from under me. I threatened legal action, not murder. He admitted to lingering near the gallery during the ball, inspecting artifacts, motive, revenge for stolen glory. Madame Sophia Duval leaned forward, her voice a husky whisper. The spirits foretold this tragedy. I warned Lord Harrington, but he mocked the unseen. Perhaps someone used the curse as a cloak for murder. Jenkins, maybe. He controls the keys. Her accusation hung in the air, theatrical but pointed. Motive unclear, though Poirot suspected blackmail, given her knowing glances. Jenkins, summoned forward, stood rigid. I served Lord Harrington 20 years, sir. The gallery was locked. I stood guard. No one passed me. His loyalty seemed genuine, but Poirot noted a tremor in his hands, a grudge over a reduced pension perhaps. Motive, resentment or theft? Hastings scribbled furiously, whispering to Poirot, Everyone's got a reason, Poirot, but how'd they do it? That mask was in a vault, and the room was sealed. Poirot paced, his fingers steepled. The method is the key, Hastings. Curare on the spikes, recently applied, the surgeon says. But how was it delivered in a locked room? A trick, perhaps, with the lock or vent? Japp interjected. We've checked the locks. Solid. No tampering. Windows are 15 feet up. Bars intact. No hidden passages, unless this place is a Gothic novel. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then we look to the impossible, Inspector. The mask was in the vault until Harrington retrieved it. Someone had access, or a method most cunning. He questioned the staff next. A footman reported seeing Dr. Thorne near the vault earlier, carrying a small vial. Curare? A red herring? Lady Eliza's maid confessed her mistress had been absent from the ballroom for 10 minutes, adjusting her costume. Reginald's valet hinted at his master's gambling debts, tens of thousands owed to unsavoury figures. Victoria's lady's maid mentioned her nursing background, including knowledge of exotic poisons. Madame Duval's assistant, a nervous girl, whispered of her mistress's potion collection from Cairo. Jenkins admitted to handling the vault keys daily, but swore he never opened it without orders. Poirot paused by a bookshelf, running a finger along a volume of Egyptian mythology. Each suspect has motive. Each opportunity is uncertain. The red herrings multiply, the curse, the vial, the debts, but the truth lies in the details. Hastings leaned in. What about the key? Could someone have a duplicate? Possible, mon ami, Poirot replied, but Jenkins and Harrington held the only ones. We must examine the room again. They returned to the gallery, where Poirot inspected the desk, the mask, the floor. A faint scratch near the vent caught his eye, tiny, almost invisible. Regardez, Hastings, a clue perhaps? Too small for a person, but for a tool? Japp grunted. A blow dart? Some jungle nonsense? Poirot smiled faintly. Perhaps, or something more mechanical. We shall see. As they left the gallery, the suspects dispersed, their faces etched with fear and suspicion. Lady Eliza wept softly. Reginald lit another cigarette. Victoria clung to him. Thorne stormed off. Madame Duval muttered prayers. Jenkins stood like a statue. Outside the fog thickened, shrouding Louvre Court in mystery. Poirot stood on the terrace, gazing at the gardens. The net tightens, Hastings. Motives are clear, but the method, this is the genius of the crime. Hastings shivered. It's like a ghost did it, Poirot, or that blasted jackal. Poirot chuckled softly. No ghosts, mon ami, only men and women with hearts full of secrets. The morning stretched on, heavy with unspoken accusations. The little grey cells were at work, and the truth was closer than anyone knew. Chapter 4. Uncovering Alibis. The afternoon of Sunday, October 25, 1925, hung heavy over Louvre Court. The Sussex sky a leaden canopy, that mirrored the mood within the estate's stone walls. The grandeur of the previous night's masquerade had vanished, replaced by a stifling air of suspicion that seeped into every corner. The gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had met his end remained sealed, guarded by a dour constable, while the mask of Anubis, now in police custody, sat in a locked evidence box, its jackal eyes no less menacing for their confinement. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a dove-grey suit with a sapphire tepper, stood in the library, his small frame radiating quiet authority. His waxed moustaches quivered as he surveyed the scene, his mind a whirl of deductions. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, clutching his notebook, his face etched with frustration. "Poirot, it's maddening. We've got motives galore. Debts, grudges, love triangles. But how did anyone get that poison into the mask? The room was locked tighter than a bank vault." Poirot's eyes twinkled with that familiar spark of intellectual delight. "Patience, mon ami. The impossible is merely the possible in disguise. We have motives, but now we seek opportunity. The alibis, they crumble like biscuits under scrutiny. Let us sift the crumbs." Inspector Japp, pacing near a fireplace that crackled fitfully, grunted his agreement. "Right, Poirot. I've got my men combing the grounds, but this place is a fortress. No footprints outside the windows, no forced locks. You're our best bet to crack this." Poirot inclined his head. "Merci, Inspector. Let us begin with the physical evidence, then test the alibis. The scratch by the vent intrigues me. It suggests a mechanism, perhaps, but we need more." He led Hastings and Japp back to the gallery, now lit by harsh daylight streaming through the high barred windows. The oak door, triple-bolted, showed no signs of tampering, its brass lock gleaming. The desk where Harrington had died bore only the faintest marks. A smudge of wax, a stray thread of crimson silk, barely noticeable. Poirot knelt, examining the vent near the floor, a narrow grille no wider than a handspan. "This vent," he mused, "too small for a person, but for a tool? A tube, perhaps, to deliver poison. No, too crude for curare." Hastings frowned. What about that thread? Could it be from a costume? "Perhaps," Poirot said, pocketing the thread in a handkerchief. "Or a deliberate plant. We must verify." They returned to the library, where Poirot summoned the staff for further questioning, seeking cracks in the suspect's stories. A nervous housemaid, Clara, stepped forward, twisting her apron. "I saw Dr. Thorne near the vault yesterday afternoon, sir, before the ball. He had a little glass vial in his hand. Looked like medicine, but he hid it quick when he saw me." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "A vial, you say? Interessant. Did you see its contents?" "No, sir, but he looked shifty. Kept muttering about Harrington's greed." A red herring, or a vital clue? Poirot filed it away. Next, a footman, Tom, reported Lady Eliza's absence from the ballroom during the ball's peak. "She said she was fixing her gown, but she was gone nigh on 15 minutes, sir. Came back looking flustered." Lady Eliza, summoned again, bristled at the accusation. "I was adjusting my costume in the powder room. The beads on my gown snagged. Jenkins can confirm I asked for a seamstress." Jenkins nodded stiffly, but Poirot noted his hesitation. Was it loyalty or fear of exposure? Reginald's alibi came under scrutiny next. A debutante recalled seeing him slip out of the ballroom just before midnight, heading toward the east wing, near the gallery. "He looked angry, sir," she said, muttering about his father. Reginald, confronted, lit another cigarette, his hands trembling. "I needed air, that's all. Father was hounding me about my debts again. I was back when the scream came." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And these debts, monsieur? How substantial?" Reginald shifted. A few thousand. Racing bets, mostly. Father refused to pay, said I'd learn the hard way. Motive strengthened. A desperate heir, poised to inherit millions. Miss Victoria Langford's alibi was equally shaky. A waiter swore she'd been near the gallery corridor, adjusting her Nefertiti headdress minutes before Harrington entered. I was nervous, she admitted, her voice quivering. Reginald's father kept glaring at me. I needed a moment alone. But her nursing background, revealed by her maid, included knowledge of curare, from a stint in a tropical hospital. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You know this poison, mademoiselle? Only academically, she stammered. I nursed soldiers, not murderers. Dr. Thorne, bristling at the maid's testimony, admitted to carrying a vial of laudanum, he claimed, for headaches. I'm no poisoner. Harrington's theft of the mask ruined my career. I'd have sued him, not killed him. But his proximity to the vault raised questions. Madame Sophia Duval's theatrics continued. She claimed a vision during the ball. Anubis pointed to a traitor among us. When pressed, she hinted at Jenkins. He handles the keys, non? Who else could tamper with the vault? Jenkins, indignant, insisted he'd been at his post all evening, corroborated by a footman, yet Poirot sensed a guardedness in his demeanour. A new clue emerged, a torn glove, black velvet, found near the gallery door, embroidered with an R. Reginald paled when shown it. It's mine, but I lost it days ago. Someone must have taken it. A classic red herring, or evidence of his presence. Poirot tucked it into evidence, his mind racing. To test alibis further, Poirot and Hastings searched the suspect's rooms with Japp's permission. In Lady Eliza's suite, they found a letter half burned in the grate, hinting at an affair with an unnamed man, motive for eliminating a controlling husband. In Reginald's room, a betting slip revealed debts of $20,000, far more than he'd admitted. Victoria's vanity held a medical journal open to a page on curare. A coincidence? Dr. Thorne's satchel contained a map of the estate, with the gallery marked in red ink. Madame Duval's room yielded a vial labelled Essence of Nightshade, though she claimed it was for spiritual rituals. Jenkins' quarters were Spartan, but a hidden drawer held a small sum of cash, stolen or a bribe. Poirot paused in the corridor, the crimson thread from the desk in his hand. This thread, Hastings, it matches no costume we saw. Perhaps from a servant's livery, or a deliberate misdirection. Hastings scratched his head. It's a maze, Poirot. Everyone's lying or seems to be, and that vent, could someone have slipped something through it? Possible, Poirot mused, but curare requires precision. A dart? A gas? No, the spikes were coated directly. We need the moment of access. They returned to the gallery, where Poirot examined the vent again. The scratch was fresh, and a faint chemical scent lingered, bitter, like the almonds noted at the crime scene. This vent, he said, it connects to the east wing. A servant's passage, perhaps? We must map it. Japp's men reported no external footprints, but a gardener mentioned seeing a shadow near the east wing windows at dusk. Dr. Thorne, perhaps, or another. Poirot requested blueprints of the estate, suspecting a hidden route, though initial searches found none. As evening fell, the suspects gathered for dinner, their faces drawn. Lady Eliza picked at her food, Reginald drank heavily, Victoria whispered to him. Thorne glared at his plate, and Madame Duval muttered about vengeful spirits. Jenkins served with mechanical precision, but his eyes avoided Poirot's. After dinner, Poirot stood by a window, gazing at the fog-shrouded gardens. The alibis, Hastings. They are like sand slipping through our fingers. Each suspect was near the gallery. Each has a secret. But the method? This is the genius of the crime. Hastings sighed. It's like chasing a phantom. Could two of them be working together? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A theory worth exploring, mon ami. The thread, the glove, the vial. These are pieces of a puzzle. Tomorrow, we dig deeper. The night settled over Louvre Court, the wind rattling the windows like a warning. The truth was closer, but cloaked in shadows, waiting for Poirot's relentless logic to pierce its veil. Suspenseful music fades in, a low, pulsing drumbeat with a haunting flute melody. Chapter 5. Hidden secrets emerge. The evening of Sunday, October 25, 1925, cloaked Louvre Court in a shroud of unease, as if the very stones of the estate sensed the gathering storm of secrets. The fog outside had thickened, curling around the ancient oaks and muffling the world beyond, while within, the grand halls felt oppressive, their opulence mocked by the spectre of murder. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in a midnight blue dinner jacket, his moustaches a study in symmetry, stood in the library, his sharp green eyes scanning the faces of the suspects gathered for an uneasy dinner. The air was heavy with suspicion, each glance a silent accusation, each word laced with hidden meaning. Captain Arthur Hastings at Poirot's side fidgeted with his tie, his notebook bulging with scribbled clues. "Poirot, it's a devil of a tangle," he whispered. "That glove, the thread, the vial, everyone's hiding something, but we're no closer to the how of it. A locked room. It's driving me batty." Poirot's lips curved faintly. "Patience, mon ami. The truth is like a fine wine. It requires time to breathe. Tonight, we probe deeper, seeking the hidden currents beneath these polished surfaces. The complications, they multiply, but so too does clarity." Inspector Japp, nursing a glass of brandy near the fireplace, grumbled, "I've got half of Scotland Yard scouring this place, Poirot. No secret passages, no tampered locks, no fingerprints but Harrington's on that blasted mask. You've got your work cut out." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot replied, his voice smooth as velvet. "But the little grey cells, they thrive on the impossible. Let us uncover the secrets that lie buried." Poirot had spent the afternoon delving into the suspect's private quarters, with Japp's reluctant approval. The search yielded a trove of revelations, each peeling back layers of deception. In Lady Eliza Harrington's suite, among her silks and perfumes, Poirot found a half-burned letter in the grate, its charred edges revealing fragments. "Cannot continue. Archibald suspects. Meet me at the handwriting matched Dr. Elias Thorne's, suggesting an affair, a motive for both to eliminate a controlling husband." Lady Eliza, confronted, flushed crimson. "It was a youthful indiscretion long over," she insisted, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "I loved Archibald, despite his obsessions." Reginald Harrington's room revealed darker secrets. Beneath a loose floorboard, Poirot discovered a forged will, dated a month prior, naming Reginald sole heir and cutting out Lady Eliza entirely. "A jest!" Reginald protested when shown it, his cigarette dropping ash. "I was angry with father, but I'd never act on it." Yet the forgery, combined with his 20,000 gambling debts, painted a damning picture, motive, to secure the estate before disinheritance. Miss Victoria Langford's vanity held a medical journal, dog-eared at a page on curare, with handwritten notes in the margins, rapid, untraceable. Her nursing past, confirmed by her maid, included work with tropical poisons in a colonial hospital. "Research, nothing more," Victoria cried, tears brimming. "I was curious about the mask's curse." But her proximity to the gallery and her expertise raised Poirot's suspicions. Motive: to secure her engagement to Reginald, unimpeded by his father's disapproval. Dr. Thorne's satchel contained more than a map. A hidden compartment held a letter from an Egyptian official, accusing him of smuggling artifacts, a charge he'd blamed on Harrington. "Lies!" Thorne barked. "Harrington framed me to justify stealing the mask." His bitterness was palpable, his marked map suggesting premeditation, motive, revenge, and professional redemption. Madame Sophia Duval's room was a treasure trove of the occult. Grimoires, talismans, and a locked box containing a vial of nightshade essence, labelled in her hand. "For spiritual cleansing," she claimed, her kohl-rimmed eyes defiant. But Poirot uncovered a ledger among her papers, detailing payments from Lord Harrington, hush money perhaps, for a scandal she'd threatened to expose. Motive: blackmail, with murder to silence her mark. Jenkins, the butler, proved no less intriguing. His Spartan quarters hid a locked tin with $500 in crisp notes, far more than a butler's salary. "Savings," he said curtly, but Poirot suspected theft or bribery. Jenkins' access to the vault keys made him a linchpin, yet his stoic demeanour revealed little. Motive: financial gain or a hidden grudge. As dinner ended, Poirot called the suspects to the drawing room, a grand chamber of velvet drapes and gilt-framed portraits. He stood before the fireplace, its flames casting his shadow large. "Mesdames et messieurs, the secrets of Louvre Court emerge like ghosts from the fog. Affairs, forgeries, poisons, blackmail. Each of you conceals a truth. But who among you turned truth to murder?" Reginald slammed his fist on a table. "This is absurd! You're accusing us all!" Victoria clutched his arm, whispering, "Reggie, calm down!" Lady Eliza glared at Thorne, who muttered, "Harrington brought this on himself." Madame Duval clutched her pendant, chanting softly, while Jenkins stood rigid, eyes downcast. A sudden twist emerged when Poirot revealed a new clue. The crimson thread from the gallery desk matched a spool in the servants' sewing room, accessible to all but suggesting a staged clue. "Someone wishes to mislead," Poirot said. "But why this thread, and not another?" Hastings whispered, "Could it point to Jenkins? He oversees the staff." "Perhaps," Poirot replied, "but it is too convenient. A red herring, meant to distract." To complicate matters, Poirot tested a theory about the mask itself. He'd requested a chemist's analysis, and Japp reported a startling find. The mask was authentic, but its inner spikes bore traces of a modern adhesive, suggesting recent tampering. Someone modified the mask, Poirot mused. But when? It was locked in the vault until Harrington retrieved it. Japp scratched his head. "So they got to it before the ball. But Jenkins swears the vault was secure." "Swears," Poirot echoed, "but oaths are not facts. We must trace the mask's journey." A housemaid, Clara, provided another lead. She'd overheard Reginald arguing with his father in the study 2 days prior, shouting, "You'll ruin me!" A footman reported seeing Victoria slip a small packet to Reginald that same day, perhaps the forged will, or something more sinister. Dr. Thorne, meanwhile, had been seen sketching the gallery's vent system, claiming it was for ventilation studies. Madame Duval's assistant admitted her mistress had visited the gallery alone during the viewing, communing with the spirits. The most perplexing clue came from a groundskeeper who'd found a burned scrap of paper in the garden incinerator bearing the words Anubis demands in an unknown hand. A deliberate plant, or a genuine ritualistic note? Poirot tucked it away, his mind racing. As night deepened, Poirot and Hastings retraced the gallery's layout. The vent, connected to a servant's passage in the east wing, was too narrow for a person, but could have carried a small device. Poirot knelt, sniffing the grill. The chemical scent stronger here. Not almonds, but something synthetic. A timed release, perhaps. Hastings gaped. A gadget? In 1925 sounds like science fiction. Poirot smiled. The criminal mind, mon ami, is always ahead of its time. We seek a mechanism, subtle, precise, deadly. The suspect's tensions boiled over at a late-night gathering. Reginald accused Thorne of planting the glove to frame him. Thorne retorted, "You're a spoiled brat who'd kill for a fortune." Victoria sobbed, "You're all monsters." Lady Eliza snapped at Madame Duval, "Your vision's a fraud." Duval's eyes flashed, hinting at deeper knowledge. Poirot intervened, his voice calm but commanding. "Enough! The truth approaches, but it requires order. Each of you has lied, but one has killed. Tomorrow we shall see more clearly." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered with Hastings, staring at the fog beyond the windows. "The complications, Hastings, they are like threads in a tapestry. The affair, the debts, the forgery, all weave together. But the vent, the adhesive, the burned note, these are the knots we must untie." Hastings shivered. "It's as if the mask itself is watching us, Poirot. Could two of them be in league?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A possibility, mon ami. The human heart is rarely solitary in its darkness." The night closed in, the estate silent save for the wind's mournful wail. The truth was near, but cloaked in layers of deceit, waiting for Poirot's relentless logic to unravel it. Suspenseful music fades in, a low, pulsing violin tremolo with a faint, eerie chime. Chapter 6. The Second Incident. The night of Sunday, October 25th, 1925, descended upon Louvre Court like a velvet curtain, heavy with secrets and foreboding. The Sussex fog pressed against the estate's windows, muffling the world outside, while within, the grand halls echoed with the tension of a house under siege. The murder of Lord Archibald Harrington in the locked gallery had cast a pall over the guests, and the air was thick with whispered accusations and sidelong glances. Hercule Poirot, resplendent in a black dinner suit, his moustaches gleaming under the chandelier's glow, stood in the drawing-room, his sharp green eyes scanning the suspects. The little grey cells were at work, piecing together the puzzle of the impossible crime. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful companion, stood nearby, his face pale from the day's revelations. "Poirot," he whispered, "it's a house of lies. That crimson thread, the forged will, the nightshade. Vile, everyone's hiding something, but we're no closer to the killer. And that vent in the gallery, could it really be the key?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Mon ami, the vent is but one piece of the mosaic. The secrets we uncovered today, affairs, debts, blackmail, they are the colours, but the method is the design. Tonight we watch, for the guilty often betray themselves under pressure." Inspector Japp, stationed near the door with a constable, grumbled, "Pressure's right, Poirot. This lot's jumpier than a sack of cats. My men found nothing new in the gallery. No hidden passages, no fingerprints. That mask was tampered with. But how? You're our last hope." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot replied, his voice calm but resolute. "The truth is near, but it requires a jolt to emerge. Let us observe." The suspects had gathered for a strange supper, their appetites dulled by suspicion. Lady Eliza Harrington, in widow's black, picked at her plate, her eyes darting to Dr. Elias Thorne, whose affair with her had been exposed. Reginald Harrington, the heir, drank heavily, his hand unsteady as he lit another cigarette, his debts and forged will weighing heavily. Miss Victoria Langford, his fiancée, sat close, her delicate features taut with fear. Dr. Thorne glared at his wineglass, muttering about Harrington's thievery. Madame Sophia Duval, draped in a shawl of indigo silk, clutched her crystal pendant, her chance of spirits now subdued. Jenkins the butler served with mechanical precision, his gaunt face betraying nothing, though Poirot noted the faint tremor in his hands. As the meal ended, the group moved to the drawing-room, where a fire roared, casting flickering shadows on the gilt-framed portraits. Poirot had requested they gather, sensing the need to stir the pot. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice cutting through the tension, "the murder of Lord Harrington was no act of Anubis, but of human cunning. Each of you has a motive, each a secret. The question is, who had the means?" Before anyone could respond, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence, echoing from the upper floors. Glasses clattered, chairs scraped, and the guests froze. "Victoria!" Reginald cried, leaping to his feet. The scream had come from the east wing, where the guest suites were located. Poirot led the charge, his small frame moving with surprising speed, followed by Hastings, Japp, and the suspects. They raced up the grand staircase, its oak banisters gleaming under gaslight, and down a corridor lined with tapestries. The scream source was Victoria's suite, its door ajar. Inside, they found her slumped on a chaise longue, her Nefertiti gown dishevelled, her face pale as death. A glass of sherry lay shattered on the floor, its contents pooling like blood. She clutched her throat, gasping, "Poison! Someone tried to kill me!" Poirot knelt beside her, his handkerchief shielding his hand as he examined the glass. A faint bitter almond scent lingered. Curare, the same poison that felled Harrington. "Mademoiselle, quickly, who gave you this drink?" Victoria's eyes were wild. I don't know. It was on my vanity when I returned from dinner. I thought a servant left it." Her voice weakened, but she remained conscious. Mercifully, the dose was small, non-fatal. Japp barked orders to seal the room, while Hastings helped Victoria to a chair. Poirot's mind raced. A second attack, in the same manner. This is no coincidence, Hastings. The killer grows bold or desperate. The suspects crowded the doorway, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion. Lady Eliza clutched her pearls, whispering, "My God, not again." Reginald knelt by Victoria, his voice hoarse. "Who did this to you, darling?" Dr. Thorne muttered, "This place is cursed." Madame Duval pointed a trembling finger at Jenkins. "The butler, he brings death." Jenkins, pale but composed, protested, "I served no sherry, madam. I was in the pantry." Poirot's eyes swept the room. The vanity held a decanter, half empty, its stopper loose. A quick test by Japp's chemist, summoned urgently, confirmed curare in the liquid. "Same poison as the mask," Japp growled. "But how'd it get here? No one was seen entering." Poirot examined the suite. The windows were locked. The door showed no forced entry, but a small air vent near the ceiling caught his eye, similar to the galleries, connected to the same servant's passage. "Another vent," he murmured. "A pattern emerges." Hastings whispered, "Could it be a frame? Victoria's own poison turned against her?" "Possible," Poirot replied, "or a warning to silence her. We must question anew." The interrogation resumed in Victoria's suite, with a doctor attending her. She recovered slowly, insisting, "I swear, I know nothing of the poison. But I saw Madame Duval near my room earlier, whispering to someone." Her accusation hung heavy, her eyes flicking to the medium. Madame Duval gasped theatrically, "Lies! I was in my room consulting the spirits." Her assistant, however, admitted Duval had left briefly, claiming to cleanse the east wing of dark energies. a weak alibi, and Poirot noted her familiarity with poisons from her Cairo travels. Reginald's temper flared. "If anyone hurt Victoria, He stopped, his eyes darting to Thorne, who'd been seen near the east wing at dusk, sketching vents. Thorne snapped, "Don't look at me. I was studying the estate's architecture, not poisoning girls." But a groundskeeper's report placed him near Victoria's window, holding a small tool, a screwdriver perhaps. Lady Eliza's alibi weakened further. A maid saw her in the east wing corridor, looking distressed, minutes before the scream. "I was checking on Victoria," she claimed. But her flushed cheeks suggested otherwise. Jenkins admitted to restocking the pantry's sherry, but swore he never touched Victoria's decanter. Yet his access to the servants' passages raised questions. Poirot's attention returned to the vent. Kneeling, he detected the same synthetic chemical scent as in the gallery. Faint, but unmistakable. "This vent," he said, "connects to the passage. A device, perhaps, to deliver the poison. But no dart, no residue, only this scent." Japp frowned. "A gas, maybe. But curare needs contact with blood." "Précisément," Poirot said. "The sherry was poisoned, but how was it placed? We need the passage's blueprint." A new clue surfaced. A smudged footprint in the servants' passage, leading to Thorne's room. The print matched his boots, though he claimed, "I walked there days ago, exploring." Another red herring, or evidence of his presence. Poirot also found a scrap of paper in Victoria's room, tucked under the vanity, with a single word, "Anubis." The handwriting matched none of the suspects, deepening the mystery. As midnight approached, Poirot gathered the suspects in the drawing room, his voice calm but commanding. "This second attack confirms our killer's audacity. The poison, the vent, the footprint, all point to a mind both cunning and reckless. But why target Mademoiselle Langford? To silence her knowledge, or to divert suspicion? Victoria, now recovered, accused Madame Duval. "She's been watching me, whispering about curses." Duval retorted, "You lie to protect your lover." Reginald lunged at her, restrained by Japp. Lady Eliza wept, "This house is doomed." Thorne scoffed, "It's human greed, not God's." Jenkins remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot raised a hand. "Enough. The clues multiply, but so does the truth. The footprint, the sherry, the word Anubis, these are threads in a tapestry of deceit. Tomorrow we shall unravel more." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered with Hastings on the terrace, the fog swirling like a living thing. "Hastings, the killer plays a dangerous game. 2 attacks, 1 method, but different outcomes. Why?" Hastings shivered. "To confuse us. Or maybe Victoria's attack was a mistake." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or a performance, mon ami. The little grey cells sense a deeper plot, perhaps a partnership in crime." The night deepened, Louvre Court silent save for the wind's mournful cry. The truth was a shadow, fleeting but near, waiting for Poirot's relentless logic to pin it down. Chapter 7. Gathering the Suspects. The morning of Monday, October 26, 1925, broke over Louvre Court with a reluctant dawn, the Sussex fog thinning to reveal a sky as grey as the mood within the estate. The grandeur of the previous days had faded, replaced by a pervasive dread that clung to the stone walls like damp moss. The gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had been murdered remained sealed, a silent testament to the impossible crime, while the mask of Anubis, now in police custody, seemed to cast a long shadow over the household. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in a tailored morning coat of slate blue, his moustaches a perfect curve, stood in the drawing-room, his sharp green eyes gleaming with purpose. The little grey cells were poised for battle, Captain Arthur Hastings at Poirot's side clutched his notebook, his face etched with exhaustion. "Poirot, this is madness," he whispered. "2 attacks, Harrington dead, Victoria poisoned but alive. That vent, the footprint, the sherry, it's a jigsaw with half the pieces missing." Poirot's smile was serene but steely. "Mon ami, the pieces are all here, hidden in plain sight. The second attack on Mademoiselle Langford, it is a clue, not a distraction. Today, we gather the suspects, and the truth will begin to emerge, like a photograph in the developer's tray." Inspector Japp, pacing near a roaring fire, adjusted his bowler hat. "You're cutting it fine, Poirot. My men are stumped. No new evidence in the gallery or Victoria's room. That vent's too small for anything but a rat, and the footprint's a dead end. You've got one shot to crack this." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot replied, his voice calm but commanding. "The net tightens. Let us assemble the players and see who flinches." The drawing-room, with its velvet drapes and gilt-framed portraits, was a stage for Poirot's performance. The suspects filed in, their faces drawn with fear and suspicion. Lady Eliza Harrington, in widow's black, sat rigidly, her lace handkerchief crumpled. Reginald Harrington, the heir, slouched in an armchair, a cigarette smouldering, his eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness. Miss Victoria Langford, pale but recovering, clung to Reginald's arm, her sapphire eyes wary. Dr. Elias Thorne, the archaeologist, stood by a window, his scowl deepening as he clutched an unlit pipe. Madame Sophia Duval, swathed in a shawl of crimson silk, fingered her crystal pendant, her kohl-rimmed eyes darting. Jenkins, the butler, stood near the door, his gaunt frame stiff, his hands clasped tightly. Poirot took centre stage, his small stature commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "2 crimes have stained Louvre Court. Lord Harrington, murdered in a locked gallery by poison on the mask of Anubis. Mademoiselle Langford, poisoned by sherry in her room, yet spared. These are not acts of a curse, but of a mind most cunning. Each of you has a motive: greed, revenge, love, betrayal. Today we unravel the lies." Lady Eliza gasped softly. "Monsieur Poirot, must you accuse us so? We're grieving." "Grief," Poirot said, "does not conceal truth. Let us review." He paced, his hands clasped behind his back. The gallery was sealed, door bolted, windows barred, no secret passages. The mask's spikes, coated with curare, killed instantly. The vent, with its chemical scent, suggests a mechanism, but how? The crimson thread, the torn glove, the burned note, all distractions, perhaps. And the second attack, why Mademoiselle Langford? Reginald snapped. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. Victoria's a victim, not a killer." Victoria nodded, trembling. "I swear, I know nothing of the poison." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet the sherry was in your room, mademoiselle, and you know curare from your nursing days. A coincidence?" Dr. Thorne scoffed. "This is nonsense. Harrington stole my mask. I'd have taken him to court, not killed him." Madame Duval's voice was low, dramatic. "The spirits warned of betrayal. The butler, he controls the keys." Jenkins stiffened. "I served faithfully, madam. I saw nothing, touched nothing." Poirot raised a hand. "Enough. Let us examine the red herrings. The glove, embroidered with R, points to Monsieur Reginald, but too obvious, non? A plant. The crimson thread matches the servant's sewing room, accessible to all, a distraction. The burned note, Anubis demands. Theatrical, perhaps Madame Duval's work." Duval gasped. "I am no murderer. The spirits speak truth." Poirot continued, undeterred. The footprint in the passage leading to Dr. Thorne's room, yet he claims it old. The vial in his satchel. Laudanum, he says. The half-burned letter in Lady Eliza's grate. An affair with Dr. Thorne, oui? Motive for both. The forged will in Monsieur Reginald's room, greed. Mademoiselle Langford's journal, knowledge of poison. Madame Duval's nightshade, blackmail. Jenkins, hidden cash, theft or bribery. Each clue points, yet misleads. Hastings whispered, Poirot, it's a fog of lies. But the vent, could it be a timed device? Précisément, Poirot said. The chemical scent suggests a modern touch. I have a theory, but we need evidence. A new clue emerged. Japp's men found a tiny glass capsule in the servants' passage near the vent to Victoria's room. It bore traces of curare and a synthetic adhesive, matching the mask's spikes. A delivery system, Poirot murmured. Dropped through the vent, perhaps, to release poison into the sherry. Japp frowned. But how'd it get there? The passage was locked. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Someone with access. Jenkins, or another who knows the estate's secrets. To test alibis, Poirot retraced the night of the second attack. A footman confirmed seeing Madame Duval near the east wing, carrying a small box. She claimed it held incense, but refused to show it. Reginald admitted arguing with Victoria before dinner, over her secrets. Was she hiding knowledge of the first murder? Lady Eliza's maid revealed her mistress had a key to the servants' passages for household oversight. Thorne's sketches of the vents were found to include precise measurements, too detailed for mere curiosity. Poirot confronted the group. The capsule suggests a mechanism, delivered through the vent. But who had the skill? Dr. Thorne, with your archaeological tools? Madame Duval, with your potions? Jenkins, with your keys? The room erupted. Reginald accused Thorne. You're obsessed with that mask. Thorne retorted. You're a debtor who'd kill for gold. Victoria sobbed. I'm innocent. Lady Eliza snapped. This is torment. Duval chanted. Anubis sees all. Jenkins remained silent, his eyes flickering. Poirot raised a hand silencing them. The truth is near. The capsule, the vent, the motives, they align. But one question remains. Why poison Mademoiselle Langford, yet let her live? A warning, a frame, or a mistake? Hastings whispered, Could it be a pair, Poirot? Two working together? Possible, Poirot said. The little grey cells sense a partnership, a mind for planning, another for execution. As the interrogation ended, Poirot requested the estate's full blueprints, suspecting a hidden access to the vents. Japp's men found a concealed panel in the east wing, leading to the servants' passage, accessible from Thorne's and Jenkins' rooms. A breakthrough, Poirot said, but not enough. We need the final piece. The suspects dispersed, their nerves frayed. Lady Eliza retired, weeping. Reginald comforted Victoria, his eyes dark with anger. Thorne stormed off, muttering. Duval prayed loudly. Jenkins vanished to his duties. Poirot stood with Hastings on the terrace, the fog curling like a living thing. The net closes, Hastings. The capsule, the panel, the motives, they point to a duo, perhaps. Tomorrow we unveil the deception. Hastings shivered. It's like the mask itself is laughing at us, Poirot. Poirot's smile was grim. No, mon ami. It is the killer who laughs, but not for long. The night deepened. Louvre Court silent save for the wind's eerie moan. The truth was a breath away, waiting for Poirot's relentless logic to seize it. Chapter 8. The Clever Deception. The morning of Monday, October 26, 1925, bathed Louvre Court in a pale, watery light, the Sussex fog lifting to reveal a landscape as taut as the nerves within the estate. The grandeur of the previous days had crumbled, replaced by a stifling atmosphere of dread that permeated the stone corridors. The gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had met his end remained under police guard, the mask of Anubis locked away, its jackal eyes no longer mocking but silent, as if awaiting Poirot's verdict. Hercule Poirot, resplendent in a tailored suit of deep charcoal, his moustaches a perfect arc, stood in the drawing-room, his small frame radiating an almost electric intensity. The little grey cells were at their peak, poised to unravel the impossible. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, his notebook worn from frantic scribbling. "Poirot, it's maddening," he whispered. "The capsule, the vent, the footprint, every clue points everywhere and nowhere. And that second attack on Victoria, how does it fit? Are we dealing with one killer or two?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. "Mon ami, the puzzle is nearly complete. The second attack, the clues, the lies, they form a pattern, a tapestry woven by a mind most cunning. Today we reveal the deception, the how, and soon the who." Inspector Japp, stationed near the fireplace, adjusted his tie, his face a mix of skepticism and hope. "You'd better be right, Poirot. My men are at their wits' end. That glass capsule in the passage, the adhesive on the mask's spikes, no trace of how they got there. If you've cracked it, I'm all ears." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot said, his voice smooth but commanding. "The truth is like a locked room itself, sealed but not impregnable. Let us gather the suspects and lay bare the mechanism of this crime." The drawing-room, with its heavy velvet drapes and flickering firelight, was a stage for Poirot's denouement. The suspects filed in, their faces etched with a mix of fear, defiance, and exhaustion. Lady Eliza Harrington, in severe black, sat with her hands clasped, her eyes avoiding Dr. Elias Thorne, whose affair with her had been exposed. Reginald Harrington, the heir, leaned against a bookcase, cigarette in hand, his jaw tight. Miss Victoria Langford, pale but composed after her poisoning, sat close to Reginald, her gaze wary. Dr. Thorne, clutching his unlit pipe, scowled at the floor. Madame Sophia Duval, swathed in a shawl of violet silk, fingered her crystal pendant, her kohl-rimmed eyes darting. Jenkins, the butler, stood by the door, his gaunt frame rigid, his expression unreadable. Poirot stood before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice clear and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, two crimes have shaken Louvre Court. Lord Harrington, murdered in a locked gallery, the mask of Anubis his death's instrument. Mademoiselle Langford, poisoned by sherry, yet spared. These are not random acts, but a performance, a deception most ingenious. Today, Poirot unveils the how." The room fell silent, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Lady Eliza's handkerchief twisted in her hands. Reginald's cigarette paused mid-air. Victoria's breath caught. Thorne's scowl deepened. Duval muttered a prayer. Jenkins stood like a statue. Poirot began, pacing slowly. The gallery was sealed, door bolted, windows barred, no secret passages. The mask's spikes, coated with curare, killed instantly. The vent with its chemical scent suggested a mechanism. The crimson thread, the torn glove, the burned note, Anubis demands, all red herrings meant to mislead. The second attack on Mademoiselle Langford, with curare in her sherry, pointed to the same hand. But how was it done? He paused, letting the tension build. The key lies in the vent and the capsule found in the servants' passage. The mask's spikes were coated with curare, held by a modern adhesive, synthetic, dissolving slowly when exposed to body heat. This was no simple poison application, but a timed device. A tiny capsule, filled with curare and adhesive, was placed inside the mask before the ball. When Lord Harrington donned it, His warmth triggered the adhesive's release, coating the spikes. The capsule, now empty, was drawn through the vent by a thin thread, burned away to leave no trace. Hastings gasped. "A timed poison! That's devilishly clever!" Japp nodded, impressed. But how'd the capsule get into the mask? The vault was locked. Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. The vault, oui, but not impregnable. Jenkins, you held one key, Lord Harrington the other. But the lock's design, a Yale model, non? It can be picked with skill. Someone entered the vault before the ball, placed the capsule, and relocked it. The thread passed through the vent to the servants' passage, was pulled after the murder, disposing of evidence. Jenkins paled. "I swear, sir, I never opened the vault." Poirot raised a hand. "We shall see. The second attack confirms the method. The sherry in Mademoiselle Langford's room, poisoned via another capsule, dropped through the vent from the passage. The dose was smaller, non-fatal, a warning perhaps, or a frame," Victoria whispered. "But why me?" Poirot's eyes locked onto hers. "That, mademoiselle, is the question. To silence you, or to cast suspicion elsewhere? The footprint in the passage leading to Dr. Thorne's room suggests a plant. The word Anubis in your room, another distraction." Thorne growled, "I'm no killer. Those sketches were for ventilation studies." Poirot continued, undeterred. The red herrings were many. The glove, stolen from Monsieur Reginald, the crimson thread from the servants' room, the burned note, theatrical but empty, the affair between Lady Eliza and Dr. Thorne, motive but not method, the forged will, greed but not proof, the nightshade vial, blackmail but not curare, the cash in Jenkins' tin, suspicious but circumstantial. Reginald snapped, "You're accusing everyone, Poirot. Get to the point." Poirot's gaze was steely. "The point, monsieur, is a partnership. One mind planned the mechanism, the capsule, the adhesive, the vent. Another executed, with access to the vault and passages. 2 hands, 1 crime." The room erupted. Lady Eliza cried, "Impossible!" Victoria clung to Reginald, who shouted, "You've no proof!" Thorne muttered, "Preposterous!" Duval chanted, "The spirits accuse!" Jenkins remained silent, his eyes flickering. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "The proof is in the details. The capsule's adhesive matches a chemical in Dr. Thorne's satchel. Not laudanum, but a synthetic compound from his archaeological work. The passage's panel, accessible from his room, allowed entry. But he lacked vault access. Jenkins, with his key and knowledge of the passages, provided it." Jenkins gasped. "Lies! I served faithfully!" Thorne roared. "You're framing me!" Poirot's voice was calm but relentless. "Dr. Thorne, your motive was revenge. Harrington stole your mask, ruined your career. Jenkins, yours was money, $500 in your tin, a bribe from Thorne to betray your master. Together you tampered with the mask, using Thorne's chemical expertise and Jenkins' keys. The second attack on Mademoiselle Langford was to frame her, diverting suspicion." Victoria sobbed. "I knew nothing," Lady Eliza whispered. "Monstrous!" Reginald lunged at Thorne, restrained by Japp. "You killed my father," Poirot continued. "The footprint was Thorne's, the capsule his design. Jenkins pulled the thread, erasing evidence, but the chemical scent betrayed you both." Japp signalled his men. "Right, you two, come with me." Thorne and Jenkins protested, but Poirot's logic was unassailable. As they were led away, he turned to Hastings. "The little grey cells, mon ami, they see through the fog." The suspects dispersed, shaken. Lady Eliza collapsed, weeping. Reginald comforted Victoria, his anger spent. Duval muttered prayers, her theatrics subdued. Poirot stood with Hastings on the terrace, the morning light breaking through. The deception is unveiled, Hastings. Tomorrow we secure the confession. Hastings shook his head. A duo, brilliant but diabolical. Poirot's smile was grim. Human nature, mon ami, always the true curse. The estate fell silent, the truth laid bare, waiting for the final act of justice. Chapter 9. The Full Confession. The afternoon of Monday, October 26, 1925, draped Louvre Court in a fragile calm, as if the Sussex estate held its breath, awaiting the final act of a tragedy that had unfolded over days of deception. The fog had lifted, revealing a pale sun that cast long shadows across the manicured lawns. But within the stone walls, the air remained thick with tension. The gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had met his end was still sealed. A silent witness to the impossible crime, while the mask of Anubis, locked in police custody, seemed to pulse with the weight of its secrets. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in a tailored suit of midnight blue, his moustaches a perfect arc, stood in the drawing-room, his small frame radiating unyielding authority. The little grey cells had triumphed, and now the stage was set for the final unveiling. Captain Arthur Hastings at Poirot's side clutched his worn notebook, his face a mix of awe and exhaustion. "Poirot, you've done it," he whispered. "Thorne and Jenkins, a partnership. That capsule, the vent, the adhesive, it's diabolical. But will they confess, or keep denying it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet certainty. "Mon ami, the guilty, when cornered, cannot resist the need to speak. The truth, like a river, finds its course. Today, we secure the confession and tie every thread of this intricate tapestry." Inspector Japp, stationed near the fireplace, adjusted his bowler hat, his whiskers twitching with anticipation. "You've got them dead to rights, Poirot. That capsule in the passage, the adhesive on the mask's spikes, brilliant work. But we need their words to seal the case. Let's see your magic." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot said, his voice smooth but resolute. "The magic is logic, and logic is relentless. Let us summon the culprits and end this charade." The drawing-room, with its heavy velvet drapes and flickering firelight, was a theatre for Poirot's final act. The suspects gathered, their faces etched with a mix of dread and curiosity. Lady Eliza Harrington, in widow's black, sat with her hands clasped, her eyes red from weeping. Reginald Harrington, the heir, leaned against a bookcase, a cigarette unlit between his fingers, his jaw tight. Miss Victoria Langford, recovered but pale, sat close to Reginald, her gaze steady but haunted. Dr. Elias Thorne, the archaeologist, stood rigid, his spectacles glinting, his hands clenched. Madame Sophia Duval, swathed in a shawl of indigo silk, clutched her crystal pendant, her kohl-rimmed eyes wide. Jenkins, the butler, stood by the door, his gaunt frame trembling slightly, his stoic mask cracking. Poirot took centre stage, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice clear and commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the crimes at Louvre Court are solved. Lord Harrington, murdered in a locked gallery by curare on the mask of Anubis. Mademoiselle Langford, poisoned by sherry, yet spared. These were not acts of a curse, but of a partnership most cunning. Dr. Elias Thorne and Jenkins, the butler." The room erupted in gasps. Lady Eliza cried, "Impossible!" Reginald swore, "You're mad!" Victoria clutched his arm. Thorne roared, "Lies! You've no proof!" Jenkins' face drained of colour, but he said nothing. Duval whispered, "The spirits knew." Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. "The proof is in the method, the motive, and the mistakes. Let us reconstruct. The gallery was sealed, door bolted, windows barred, no secret passages. The mask's spikes, coated with curare via a synthetic adhesive, killed instantly. A glass capsule, found in the servants' passage, delivered the poison, triggered by body heat when Lord Harrington donned the mask. A thread, burned away, pulled the capsule through the vent, erasing evidence. The second attack on Mademoiselle Langford used the same method, a capsule in her sherry, dropped through a vent, but with a non-fatal dose. Japp nodded. Clever, but how'd the capsule get into the mask? Poirot's eyes locked onto Jenkins. The vault inspector was not impregnable. Jenkins, you held one key, Lord Harrington the other. But you, with your intimate knowledge of Louvre Court, knew the lock could be picked. You provided access to Dr. Thorne, who prepared the capsule with his chemical expertise. Jenkins stammered, I never touched the vault. Thorne snarled, This is a frame-up. I'm a scholar, not a murderer. Poirot's voice was relentless. Dr. Thorne, your motive was revenge. Lord Harrington stole the mask of Anubis from your dig, ruining your career. Your satchel held the adhesive, not laudanum, a chemical you used in archaeological preservation. The footprint in the passage was yours, from boots you wore that night. Jenkins, your motive was money, $500 in your tin, a bribe from Thorne to betray your master. Lady Eliza gasped. Jenkins, how could you? Reginald lunged at Thorne, restrained by Japp. You killed my father for a grudge, Victoria whispered. It's monstrous. Poirot continued, his voice unwavering. The red herrings were many. The torn glove, stolen from Monsieur Reginald to frame him. The crimson thread, from the servants' room, a distraction. The burned note, Anubis demands, penned by Thorne to fuel the curse myth. The affair between Lady Eliza and Dr. Thorne, misdirection, the forged will, Reginald's folly but not murder. Mademoiselle Langford's journal, curiosity, not guilt. Madame Duval's nightshade, blackmail, but not this crime. Duval muttered, the spirits saw betrayal. Poirot turned to Thorne. You designed the capsule, using your knowledge of chemicals. You entered the vault, with Jenkins' aid before the ball. You placed the capsule, threaded it through the vent, and waited. When Lord Harrington donned the mask, the adhesive dissolved, poisoning him. Jenkins pulled the thread, disposing of the capsule. Thorne's face twisted. You've no evidence. That capsule could be anyone's. Poirot produced a small vial from his pocket. This, found in your room, matches the adhesive's composition, and the passage's panel, accessible from your quarters, confirms your movements. Jenkins, your cash betrays you, a payment for silence. Jenkins's shoulders slumped, his voice low. I needed the money, my pension was cut. Thorne promised more. Thorne exploded. You traitor! He lunged at Jenkins, but Japp's men restrained him. Poirot's voice softened, but his gaze was piercing. Confess, monsieur, the truth is out. Jenkins broke first, his voice trembling. It's true. Thorne approached me weeks ago. He hated Harrington, said he'd ruined him. He offered $500 to get into the vault. I picked the lock, let him in. He rigged the mask. I didn't know it'd kill him, just thought it'd scare him. Thorne laughed bitterly, his defiance crumbling. Harrington deserved it. That mask was mine, my life's work. He bought it with blood money, mocked my loss. I made the capsule, used the adhesive to coat the spikes. Jenkins pulled the thread after. The girl's poisoning, that was to throw. You off, make her look guilty. Poirot nodded. And the sherry, why non-fatal? Thorne sneered. To scare her. She was nosy, always near the gallery. We thought she'd seen something. Victoria gasped. I saw nothing. You're monsters. Poirot's voice was calm but final. The little grey cells have spoken. The capsule, the adhesive, the vent all confirm your guilt. The second attack was your mistake. Too bold, revealing your method. Japp signalled his men. Right, you two, cuffs on. You're for the dock. As Thorne and Jenkins were led away, the room fell silent. Lady Eliza wept. Archibald, forgive us." Reginald held Victoria, his anger spent. Duval muttered prayers, her theatrics subdued. Poirot turned to Hastings. "The confession is complete, mon ami. Every clue, the thread, the glove, the note, served to obscure, but logic prevailed." Hastings shook his head. "Brilliant, Poirot, but that capsule, such a fiendish trick." Poirot's smile was faint. "The human mind, Hastings, is the true fiend. Greed and revenge, the oldest motives." The suspects dispersed, the weight of truth settling over Louvre Court. The fire burned low, the portraits watching in silence as justice took its course. Chapter 10. Resolution and Farewell. The afternoon of Tuesday, October 27th, 1925, bathed Louvre Court in a gentle, golden light, as if the Sussex estate sighed in relief after days of turmoil. The fog that had cloaked the grounds had dissipated, revealing manicured lawns and ancient oaks standing sentinel under a pale autumn sky. The grand halls, once vibrant with the revelry of a masquerade, now echoed with a sombre stillness. The weight of murder lifted but not forgotten. The gallery where Lord Archibald Harrington had met his end was unsealed, its oak door open to the air, while the mask of Anubis, secured in a police vault, no longer cast its ominous shadow. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a tailored morning coat of soft grey, his moustaches a perfect curve, stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, his sharp green eyes reflective. The little grey cells had triumphed, and now the time for farewells had come. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him. His tweed suit slightly rumpled, his face a mix of awe and melancholy. "Poirot, you've done it again," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Thorne and Jenkins caught in their own web. That capsule, the adhesive, the vent, it was fiendish, but you saw through it. Still, what a grim affair." Poirot's lips curved into a faint, wistful smile. "Mon ami, the human heart is both the puzzle and the tragedy. Greed, revenge, betrayal, these are the true curses, not some ancient mask. But come, let us reflect on the order of events, for clarity is the reward of logic." Inspector Japp joined them, his bowler hat tipped back, his whiskers twitching with satisfaction. "Poirot, you're a marvel. Thorne and Jenkins are in custody, singing like canaries to cut their sentences. The evidence, capsule, adhesive, that hidden panel, nailed them. You've saved my bacon again." "Merci, Inspector," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "But it was the little grey cells, not Poirot alone, that unravelled this knot. Let us walk, and I shall explain all for the sake of completeness." The trio strolled through the gardens, the gravel paths crunching underfoot, the air sweet with the scent of late roses. Poirot's voice, calm and precise, wove the final tapestry of the case. The crime at Louvre Court was a masterpiece of deception, planned by Dr. Elias Thorne and executed with Jenkins the butler. Their motives were clear. Thorne's revenge for the stolen mask of Anubis, which ruined his career, and Jenkins' greed, fueled by a $500 bribe to betray his master. The method, however, was the genius. Hastings nodded, his notebook open for the last time. "That capsule, it was a devilish trick, Poirot. How did you piece it together?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The clues, mon ami, told their story. The mask of Anubis, locked in the vault, was tampered with before the ball. Thorne, with his archaeological expertise, crafted a glass capsule filled with curare and a synthetic adhesive, dissolving with body heat. Jenkins, with his key and knowledge of the estate's passages, picked the vault's lock, allowing Thorne to place the capsule inside the mask. A thin thread passed through the gallery's vent to the servants' passage, ensured the capsule's removal after the deed. Japp whistled, and the thread burned away, leaving no trace clever blighters." "Oui," Poirot continued, "but not flawless. The chemical scent in the vent betrayed the adhesive. The capsule found in the passage confirmed the mechanism. The second attack on Mademoiselle Langford was their error, intended to frame her or silence her suspicions, but the non-fatal dose revealed their method." Hastings frowned. Why Victoria, though? Was she onto them? Poirot paused by a fountain, its water sparkling in the sunlight. Perhaps. Mademoiselle Langford was observant, often near the gallery. Thorne feared she'd seen him or Jenkins. The sherry, poisoned via another capsule dropped through her room's vent, was meant to scare or incriminate her. But the smaller dose betrayed their haste. Japp chuckled. And all those red herrings, the glove, the thread, that Anubis note, meant to throw us off. Précisément, Poirot said. The torn glove, stolen from Monsieur Reginald, pointed to him. The crimson thread from the servant's sewing room was a distraction. The burned note, penned by Thorne, fueled the curse myth. The affair between Lady Eliza and Thorne, the forged will, Madame Duval's nightshade, all misdirections clouding the truth. Hastings shook his head. And the others, Lady Eliza, Reginald, Victoria, Duval, they were innocent. Innocent? Of murder? Oui, Poirot replied. Lady Eliza's affair was a scandal, not a crime. Reginald's debts and forged will were folly, not murder. Victoria's knowledge of curare was curiosity, not guilt. Madame Duval's blackmail was opportunistic, but unrelated. Each played their part in the drama, but only Thorne and Jenkins wielded the fatal hand. As they reached the rose garden, Poirot paused gazing at a statue of Anubis, its jackal eyes carved in marble. The mask was the catalyst, Hastings. Its legend of a curse masked human greed and vengeance. But the little grey cells, they see beyond myths. Japp clapped Poirot's shoulder. You've earned a rest, Poirot. The case is closed, and I'm off to file the paperwork. Drinks at the pub later? Poirot smiled. Perhaps a tisane, Inspector, but I accept. As Japp departed, Poirot and Hastings returned to the drawing-room, where the remaining guests were packing to leave. Lady Eliza, her composure restored, approached Poirot, her eyes brimming. Monsieur Poirot, thank you. Archibald's death was a tragedy, but knowing the truth, it brings some peace. Poirot bowed. Madame, it is my duty to restore order. Your husband's memory is honoured. Reginald, his arm around Victoria, nodded gruffly. You're a queer chap, Poirot, but a genius. We'll name our first son Hercule, eh, Victoria? Victoria, her smile tentative, added, I'm just glad it's over. Thank you, monsieur. Madame Sophia Duval, her shawls less dramatic, offered a rare sincerity. The spirits were right about betrayal, Monsieur Poirot, but your mind saw clearer. Poirot inclined his head. Madame, the spirits may whisper, but logic shouts. As the guests dispersed, their motor cars crunching down the drive, Poirot and Hastings sat by the fire, the room now quiet. Hastings sipped a brandy, his voice reflective. Poirot, this case, it's one for the books. A locked room, a cursed mask, a duo of killers. How do you do it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The method, Hastings, is simple. Observe, listen, think. The human heart is predictable yet surprising. Greed and revenge are old stories, but each telling is unique. The little grey cells, they find the pattern. Hastings chuckled. And what now? Back to London? More mysteries? Oui, mon ami, Poirot said, sipping a tisane. But first, a day of rest. The roses of Louvre Court deserve one more admiring glance. The next morning, as their train pulled away from Ashford Cross, Poirot gazed out at the receding estate, its turrets fading into the mist. Human nature, Hastings, he murmured. It is the true mystery, always complex, always compelling. Hastings nodded, closing his notebook. And you, Poirot, are its master solver. The train chugged toward London, carrying the detective and his friend back to their lives. The case of the Mask of Anubis, a chapter closed, but the book of human folly ever open.